Hey, it's John F. Gately. You can call me Jack, and I'm joining you today from beautiful Bourne, Massachusetts, Buzzards Bay, to be specific, right by the railroad bridge and the Bourne Bridge down by the Cape Cod Canal. And today's episode, we're going to focus on the new numbers out of New York about who is in the hospital for COVID versus who is in the hospital with COVID, or what some people are calling incidental. So just as a backdrop, if you haven't kept up, on Monday, Governor Hochul announced that she had always wondered how many people are in the hospital with COVID, or what some people, as I said, are calling incidental. In other words, they're not there for the primary reason because they have COVID. They're there because they're having a baby, they had a heart attack, they're in a car accident, whatever. They're there for some other reason, and they happen to test positive while they're there for the fact that they fell off the ladder or whatever it is they're there for. So she always wondered that. Just kind of float that out there as a trial balloon. And then what do you know, by Friday, all of a sudden they had all of the statewide statistics. It's almost as if she already had the numbers, looked them over, and then decided to make them public because it benefited her. Many of you, me, you, lots of you have been screaming about this issue since May of 2020. How many people are actually in the hospital primarily because of COVID versus incidentally because of COVID? And that just got drowned out in the fear porn of 2020 because it had the electoral advantage. We've got to get rid of Orange Man Bad. And it had the electoral benefit for the Democrats to ramp up the fear porn as high as possible because that benefited them at the ballot box. So now 2020 rolls around. Just as a backdrop, Governor Hochul, who was taken over because of Cuomo, she's never been elected to the governorship, but now she faces an election for the governorship this fall in November, which really isn't that far away. And she's seen what happened to Trump, she's seen what happened to Cuomo, and she doesn't want this to be the same type of effect that you would have with a giant blizzard, where you said 1978 here in Massachusetts, basically everyone blamed the governor and he got swept out of office, and you've probably seen this in places where you lived. So she doesn't want to be that electoral victim. She doesn't want to have this COVID thing laid on her doorstep. So how do we massage the statistics to downplay the impact of the virus? Now, frankly, from an intellectual statistical point of view, I'm all for this. I just think it should have happened very early in 2020. The reason why they're doing it now is because it favors their electoral chances this year. We cannot have the fear porn machine spin out of Kathy Hochul's control. And that's exactly what she's seeing in New York State. Now, here in beautiful Massachusetts, behind enemy lines, Governor Baker also, just curiously, it's just amazing how Hochul floated the trial balloon on Monday, and Baker made the same announcement Tuesday or Wednesday. It was just came right after each other. Just pure coincidence. And very soon here in Massachusetts, we're going to be able to see these statistics here in Massachusetts. But what are they in New York? I got these right here for you. Let me just pull it up on the screen here. Here we go. Statewide in New York, 43% of the recent hospital admissions have been for some other primary reason. In other words, 43% of the COVID hospitalizations have not really been for COVID. They've been because someone's having a baby, fell off a ladder, had a heart attack, blah, 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 hit the car accident, whatever. All those things that send you to the hospital. In other words, only 57% statewide of the COVID hospitalizations are actually for COVID. This gives us a whole new look at what we're looking for, or as the scope of the problem. Now, in New York City, it's even higher. 49%, let's just call it half. Half of all the COVID hospitalizations in New York City are not for COVID. They're for some other reason. Now, if you take the New York numbers, which just came out on Friday, and you strip out New York City, you get a number statewide that is, I'm just going to roughly approximate, about 35%. In other words, without New York City, statewide, 35% of the hospitalizations for COVID are not really for COVID. So this allows the governor to say, when she's going to start saying this, I mean, the talking points are out there, that it's not as bad. Because as this Omicron, or whatever this wave is called, gets way out of their control, they need to redefine the wave, because it's no longer in their electoral interest to have it out of control. In 2020, they really wanted it out of control, got to get rid of Orange Man. But now, that doesn't favor them because they're up for election and they're vulnerable later this year. So you've got to somehow come up with a way to say it's not as bad, which is actually what we've been saying, a lot of us have been saying since the beginning of this thing. And this is how they're going to do it. Here in Massachusetts, the governor, I'm expecting, and I'll bring you those numbers as soon as they come out, that here in Massachusetts, we're going to see some type of similar numbers. We'll see. But this is the start of the reinvention of what the virus actually is. Now, does this mean that they're going to start to get rid of the mask mandates and get rid of the vaccine passport? No, absolutely not, because these people have no problem holding two conflicting thoughts in their mind without a problem. They do that all the time. They're not honest about the issue, except when it really benefits them. And that's not going to happen. You're going to see that these numbers are going to be spun in a way that the virus isn't bad, but we've got to keep up our efforts. We can't stop now. And that's what's happening. So if you ever thought that the COVID thing wasn't nearly as bad as the media and the politicians were telling you, but you just didn't have the data, well, guess what? You were right all along. Hey, I'm John F. Gately. You can call me Jack. Joining you from beautiful Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts, behind enemy lines. See you later.